It started with a message that raced across the world, lighting up screens, radios, and military channels with the same electrifying words, "We got him." It was short, direct, and powerful. But behind those 3 words was a story so intense, so emotionally charged, and so deeply human that it would soon be remembered as one of the most daring rescue missions in modern American military history. And for the man rescued that day, it was a story of survival, pain, hope, and the unshakable belief that he would not be left behind. On April 5th, 2026, the 37th day of Operation Epic Fury, U.S. Special Forces succeeded in rescuing the 2nd crew member of a downed F-15E fighter jet inside Iran. It was an operation carried out in the unforgiving heart of the Zagros Mountains, a place where nature itself becomes an enemy, where sheer cliffs slice the horizon, where narrow ridgelines push over 7,000 feet into the air, and where deep shadowed valleys stretch like scars across the land. A place where hiding is possible, but moving is a nightmare, especially when you're injured, exhausted, hunted, and alone. 48 hours earlier, the skies above those same mountains had erupted with fire. The F-15E Strike Eagle, one of America's most powerful fighter jets, had been hit. Flames tore across its wings. Alarms screamed in the cockpit, and the aircraft spiraled downward. Both crew members managed to eject, their parachutes drifting apart as they descended. Winds in high-altitude terrain can push 2 people miles away from each other, and that's exactly what happened. The pilot landed in one area. The weapons systems officer, a respected colonel, landed in another, much more dangerous region. While the pilot was rescued the next day during an early push, the helicopters that picked him up came under heavy enemy fire. Damage was severe. Crew members were injured. The mission barely made it back. That event forced the United States to halt public statements, because the 2nd crew member was still out there, still alive, still trying to evade capture, and the Iranian forces were closing in. The crash site had become a magnet. IRGC units, elite special teams, local militias, tribal fighters, and even ordinary villagers joined the massive manhunt. Bounties worth tens of thousands of dollars were announced. Posters spread across mountain towns. Loudspeakers mounted on pickup trucks roared through valleys, promising rewards to anyone who spotted the American officer. The stakes were now higher than ever. But the colonel wasn't just an officer. He was a survivor, even injured from the landing. He immediately switched into seer mode. Survival, evasion, resistance, escape. His training, years in the making, suddenly became his lifeline. The moment he hit the rocky ground, he ditched anything that could reflect sunlight, removed straps that could produce sound, cut loose his parachute, and began crawling up the steep, shale slopes to break, line of sight from approaching search teams. Night fell quickly in the mountains, covering everything in silence and icy wind. As the temperature dropped, he found a narrow, rocky crevice. He tucked himself inside, steadying his breathing, listening for engines, footsteps, or voices echoing through the valley. He waited, still as stone, using the darkness as his shield. Then he activated the Combat Survivor Evader Locator, the device designed to send short, encrypted bursts of information through frequency-hopping channels that appeared like background noise to enemy detectors. No long transmissions, no voice calls, just a quiet whisper to the sky, alive, injured, mobile, enemy near. That whisper traveled thousands of miles and reached command centers across the region. And at that moment, everything changed. But the colonel wasn't just an officer. He was a survivor, even injured from the landing. He immediately switched into seer mode. Survival, evasion, resistance, escape. His training, years in the making, suddenly became his lifeline. The moment he hit the rocky ground, he ditched anything that could reflect sunlight, removed straps that could produce sound, cut loose his parachute, and began crawling up the steep, shale slopes to break, line of sight from approaching search teams. Night fell quickly in the mountains, covering everything in silence and icy wind. As the temperature dropped, he found a narrow, rocky crevice. He tucked himself inside, steadying his breathing, listening for engines, footsteps, or voices echoing through the valley. He waited, still as stone, using the darkness as his shield. Then he activated the combat survivor evader, locator, the device designed to send short, encrypted bursts of information through frequency-hopping channels that appeared like background noise to enemy detectors. No long transmissions, no voice calls, just a quiet whisper to the sky, a live, injured, mobile enemy near. That whisper traveled thousands of miles and reached command centers across the region. And at that moment, everything changed. By the night of April 4th, intelligence pinpointed a narrow window for extraction. IRGC movements had created a gap small enough to slip through, but large enough to stage a rescue. The plan was dangerous, but there was no alternative. Under the cover of total darkness, the Night Stalker helicopters lifted off, their rotors whispering across the desert. The aircraft flew low, hugging terrain to avoid radar, slipping through valleys like phantoms. Reaper drones circled above, controlling the sky. Electronic warfare jets blinded Iranian radar below. Surveillance aircraft jammed communication lines between Tehran and local IRGC commanders. The entire region was turned into a fog of confusion, a fog built for one purpose, to save a man's life. As the rescue teams approached the target zone, the colonel saw faint lights moving between ridges, not enemy flashlights, but infrared beacons from American soldiers. He knew help had arrived. The ground team reached him in silence. There were no cheers, no noise, no celebration. Only a quiet, steady voice saying, "We've got you." They checked his injuries, stabilized him, and prepared to move. But the moment extraction began, the mountains exploded with chaos. IRGC forces who had been patrolling the nearby slopes suddenly detected movement. Gunfire erupted, echoing violently. The night sky lit up with tracers. Rockets launched from the hillside. American operators returned fire instantly, unleashing a wall of precision firepower. Helicopters swooped in low, their miniguns tearing through the darkness. Above them, A-10 attack aircraft rolled in, firing devastating bursts that shook the ground. This was no longer a stealth retrieval. It was open combat. The rescue team formed a protective circle around the colonel, pushing toward the extraction zone through a storm of bullets and explosions. Every step forward was fought for. Every second counted. Operators were shouting coordinates into radios. Pilots were calling in strikes within yards of their own men. The mountains glowed orange from the blasts. Then came the final sprint to the extraction aircraft. Two of the planes immediately got stuck in the mud. Crews tried everything to free them, but time had run out. The only option was destruction. Explosives were placed. Engines roared, and the aircraft were blown to pieces to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. The last aircraft waited, engines screaming, its crew shouting for everyone to board. The colonel was lifted inside. Operators piled in after him. The ramp closed. The aircraft surged forward, lifting into the night sky while gunfire chased them upward. And then, finally, silence. The mountains fell away beneath them. The danger slipped behind, and the world soon heard the message, "We got him." But this story is more than military heroism. It's a story about a nation that refuses to abandon its own, about men who traveled into the jaws of danger for one human life, about courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable faith that no matter how deep behind enemy lines you are, someone will come for you. At its heart, this isn't a war story. It's a human story, a story about hope, rescued from the mountains, a story about belief, carried through the darkness, a story about life, protected at all costs, and it will be remembered as one of the most daring rescues in U.S. history.